Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be going over a nice little opening defense for the Queen's Gambit. And so if you don't like to play the Queen's Gambit accepted line, today we're going to be going over a Queen's Gambit decline line, and that is the Slav defense. We're going to be going over a lot of different variations. This is very popular in GM play because there are so many different variations in the Slav defense. We're going to go over some of the main points of some of the most popular variations that you will see. The Slav defense starts out with pawn to d4, pawn to d5, both trying to control the center with their pawns. From here, white's going to play pawn to c4, and then black is going to play pawn to c6. Instead of playing pawn to e6, instead he's first going to play pawn to c6, trying not to block off his light square bishop, and at the same time protecting his pawn on d5. Now there are a lot of variations. One of the first ones we'll touch on is the exchange variation, and it's pawn captures on d5, and black responds capturing on d5. And I really feel that this is one of the least exciting variations of the opening. And for this, a lot of times you'll actually, instead of c6 first, you'll see the semi-Slav, which is e6 first, and then c6 will eventually come into the mix. And we'll actually go over the semi-Slav in another video since it's a completely different defense in itself. But the Slav continues with c6, and the exchange variation which we talked about is less common, but we'll go over the main line and some of the main variations that you will see from the main line. And the main line continues with knight to f3, trying to control the center, development of his knight. And from here, black's going to do the same. He's going to develop his knight to f6. And then white's going to bring his knight to c3. And from here, black's going to go and start taking pieces. He's going to take on c4. And from here, it's a very important move. White needs to play a4. And what this does is it prevents black from playing his pawn to b5. Now, a lot of players, if they're very aggressive like myself, they may even try a move like e4. This is the Slav Gambit. And this is offering up this pawn back so that black can play pawn to b5, holding on to this pawn. But it's really tough to say if white has adequate compensation for this pawn. Instead, if you're playing white and you do see the Slav, I would actually recommend just playing the a4, pawn to a4. And what this does is it doesn't allow black to play his pawn to b4. But what it does do is, if you can see, anytime your opponent plays, you want to see the space that he left. And this pawn on the a file is really going to be used to defend this b4 pawn. But once it comes up to a4, it can no longer defend this b4 square. So this b4 square is going to be a major theme throughout the Slav defense. So if you're playing the main line and you do come across this, always be aware that black's going to be looking at this b4 square, and he's going to try to hold on to it, and white in turn is going to try to make sure that black does not hold on to it the entire game. So play can continue from here. Bishop to f5, and what bishop to f5 does is a couple things. One, it develops this light square bishop, so from here black can continue to play his pawn to e6 without trapping in his light square bishop, and at the same time it prevents white from playing e4. White would really like to play e4 with his pawn, putting his pawn in a nice central square, but at the same time at a discovered attack on this c4 pawn. With our pawn not being able to be on b5, black's going to lose this pawn. It's all a matter of how white takes it, and he would really like to play e4, getting great central control with his pawns, and at the same time taking on c4 with his bishop right here. Now, since white can't play e4 in this situation because our bishop is here on f5, instead you'll see pawn to e3. And what this does is two things. One, it allows to open up this bishop, this light square bishop, but at the same time it connects these pawns. Now, eventually white would like to play his pawn to e4, but he can't right away because our bishop. But he would like to play e4 because it would solidify the middle with his pawns, and at the same time, right now he's blocking off his dark square bishop on c1, and he would like to open that up. So right away he's going to play e3, and from here black's going to play e6. Now anytime you see pawns on e6 and c6, eventually the knight is going to be played from b8 to d7. This is just the normal development for the knights if a pawn is on c6 and e6, and we'll see this later in the game. But what this pawn to e6 does is it allows our dark square bishop to get into the action. Remember, we'd really like to bring our dark square bishop to this b4 square. So from here, white's going to play bishop takes on c4, centralizing his bishop and at the same time equalizing in material. From here, we're going to continue with our game plan. We're going to bring our bishop to b4. And this is going to be a great square for our bishop for the time being. We're pinning down this knight to the king, and at the same time, the pawns that would normally kick this bishop out would be on c and a, and both of those pawns can no longer kick this bishop out. So for a while, our bishop's going to be here until we don't want him to anymore. Now from here, you'll see white castle, and he castles kingside because his knight's being pinned, and he doesn't want his knight being pinned anymore. So he's just going to get his king to the castle king side to get it more king safety. And from here, we're going to do exactly what we talked about before. We're going to bring our knight to d7, and this is a great development square. Knight can come into the middle anytime he wants. Next, we can castle kingside if we want for king safety, but this is going to be the main line that you'll see in the Slav very often. And from here, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. Black eventually would like to play a move like to c5 or e5, trying to break up the middle. And white would really like to play a move like e4, trying to gain center control. So it really comes down to these different themes of what both sides are trying to do. Black the entire game tries to hold on to this b4 pawn, this b4 square. And at the same time, if you see the white knight come to h4, a lot of times players will try to get the bishops away from your opponent. You can leave your bishop here. A lot of times players will not only allow the other team to take their bishop, but let's say black castles kingside and the knight takes on f5. A lot of black players like to let white do this, so when they recapture, they have more control of this e4 square. Remember, the center is very important, so if we have more pressure on this e4 square with our knight on f6 and our pawn on f5, this is very strong for black. So these are a few ideas that you'll want to take a look at when looking at the Slav defense, especially in the main line. Another variation that you're going to see in the Slav defense is the simple decline line. And so I want to go over it because there are a few missteps that a lot of people make. And so I want to go over just exactly how you should approach it when you come across it. So Slav starts out with d4, d5, c5, and c6. And from here, white's going to play knight to f3, and black's going to play knight to f6. Now there's two moves that white can make. We went over the c3 move, but a lot of times you'll see the white pawn come to e3 right away. He's not trying to bring his knight into the action yet. Instead, he's freeing up his bishop, so if black takes on c4, he doesn't have to worry about playing a4 and worrying about this b4 square the entire game, which a lot of white players don't like to worry about. Instead, he plays e3, so after black takes, white can simply come down, capture with his bishop on c4, and he doesn't have to worry about this b4 square or his pawn on a4 the entire game. So if you see this, keep in mind, because if he does play this, you don't have to take on c4, I was just showing you, but from here, your bishop can come to f5, and this is going to be a very good square for your bishop. From here, if white captures on c5 and we recapture with our pawn, then we have great central control. We can now bring our pawn to e6. Our light square bishop is not blocked in. We can get our dark square bishop into the game. We can castle kingside, and black's going to have a very good game from here. The problem arises if you're expecting e3 and don't play accordingly. Let's say white plays d4, we play d5, they play c4, and after c6 they play knight to f3, knight f6, and now instead they play knight to c3, which is the main line that we talked about. Now let's say we try to bring our bishop into the action on f5. Now remember, before we didn't play this as our first move, but let's say we try to play it now thinking that it was e3. Now from here, this is going to be a huge mistake. The queen can now come to b3 for white, and they're going to have a huge advantage. See now that he has three attackers on this one pawn, his pawn, his knight, and his queen, and at the same time he's attacking this pawn on b7. Black can't defend both of these without losing a tempo. He's going to have to move his bishop back to c8, and this is going to be very bad for black. So keep in mind that if he plays his knight, then I would go ahead and move along with the main theme that we talked about earlier in the video. And if he plays e3, then it's going to be safe for you to play your bishop to f5, but not otherwise. Make sure that you always have all your different variations in your mind so that you don't play the wrong thing and get completely messed up. So this is the Slav variation. Hope you guys learned a lot on this Queen's Gambit decline line. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.